Hey, good evening, ladies and gentle drunks. My name is Kevin Olson. I'm a recovered alcoholic.
Let me go.
Welcome you all to the fourth dimension. Big book study, that is, and very happy to have you all here. I know I'm happy to be here. Thank you all for joining. Let's start, as we always do, with the set-aside prayer tonight. God, please help me to set aside everything I think I know about you, about me, about my fellow man, and the 12 steps. And please allow me to gain a fresh new vision, perspective, and understanding of what you, what me, what my fellow man, and the 12 steps are all about. Amen. And as we always do, because this is the fourth dimension big book study, we will read the two parts of the book that refer to the fourth dimension. So first, on page 8, Bill Wilson writes that I was soon to be catapulted into what I like to call the fourth dimension of existence. I was to know happiness, peace, and usefulness in a way of life that is incredibly more wonderful as time passes. And then on page 25, Bill Wilson writes, that we have found much of heaven and we have been rocketed into a fourth dimension of existence of which we had not even dreamed. Okay, we're going to be catapulted. We're going to be rocketed. And as we always do, guys, everyone, for the sake of tradition, put one hand up like this. Come on, Dominic. And put another hand up like this. And everybody go, oh, yeah. Lovely to have you guys. Dominic, I'm really pleased to see you here, brother. I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're here. I mean, I'm glad you're all here, but Dominic, you may not know this, but you got a special place in my heart. You all have a special place in my heart, but you know how it is. I'm just glad to see you here, Dom. Dom is almost relatively new and coming back, and I'm just super happy to have you here. Super happy to have you here, brother. I'm really glad you're here. So, okay, guys, just by way of review, just in terms of the bottom line foundation of this big book study, of the fourth dimension big book study. And I've been teaching this study now for the better part of 15 years, over 15 years I've been doing this study. And so can anyone tell me, does anyone know, does anyone recall, what is the transition that I need to make as a member of Alcoholics Anonymous? What is the transition that every alcoholic needs to make in AA? We've talked about this several times. I need to make a transition. I bet you Benjamin remembers. Benjamin's been here the last few weeks. We need to be, I'll tell you what, Benjamin, I'll give you the first one. We need to make a transition from being a taker to being a
giver.
Oh, yeah! Nailed it. Well done. We need to make that transition from being takers to being givers. Okay? I came to AA for years, brothers and sisters, and all I did was take from AA. I would take and take and take from AA. And what I needed to do was start to make that transition from being a taker to being a giver. What can I contribute? What can I give back to AA? And ultimately, what can I give back to life? What can I give back to the world? Right? Because our real purpose is to fit ourselves to be of maximum service to God and his fellows. How do I fit myself? How do I do that? How do I become fit? How do I become spiritually fit enough to begin to give back, to be of maximum service to God and his fellows? Well, again, just for the sake of review, I needed to know what my problem was. I needed to know what my solution was, and I needed a program of action that I can do to achieve this solution, to overcome the problem, okay? And that program of action, those 12 steps that we originally get from the Oxford group, and we're going to talk about them tonight, those 12 steps, that is how I fit myself to be of maximum service to AA. Okay. I thought for a long time that Alcoholics Anonymous was just about going to meetings. Okay. 90 meetings in 90 days, or we'll refund your misery. Isn't that what I heard? That's what I heard all the time. Meeting makers make it. Okay. Just go to meetings and don't drink, even if your ass falls off. Okay. Just don't go to meetings and don't drink no matter what. Brothers and sisters, I drink no matter what. That's what I do. I drink no matter what. Ass falls off, I drink. Ass doesn't fall off, I drink. Okay? Saturday night, New Year's Eve, I drink. Tuesday afternoon, bored at home, I drink. Okay? This is what people like me do. I'm an alcoholic. My problem is not external. My problem is internal. Okay? The unmanageability of my life is not external. The unmanageability of my life is internal. When we talk about the unmanageability of life in step one, we are not talking about the crazy things and the unpaid bills and the lost jobs and the broken windows. Okay? When I talk about the unmanageability of my life, what I'm talking about is the way that I think and the way that I feel. Usually, the way that I'm thinking about the way that I'm feeling, and the way that I'm feeling about the way that I'm thinking. All right? Or the way that I'm thinking about the way that I'm feeling about the way that I'm feeling. You guys understand? I know you do, because you're real alcoholics like me. You know exactly what it's like to be exhausted from my own mind. I heard someone say that last week, and I love that. I was exhausted by my own mind. The way that I was thinking about the way that I was feeling, and the way that I was feeling about the way that I was thinking, and so on and so on and so on, until eventually that type of unmanageability, that type of stress, that type of restlessness, irritability, and discontent. I drink, man. That's what I do. I drink. In the absence of a spiritual solution. This is the solution that we have here in AA. Let there be no misunderstanding about what our solution is. Our solution is a spiritual one. Okay? And that means we are going to talk about God. Okay? G to the OD, baby. Okay? No, I can call it anything I want. I can talk about a higher power. I can talk about spirit of the universe, whatever it is. So long as it makes sense to me. So long as it makes sense to me and I believe in it. And I believe that that power is more powerful than my problem. Okay? I don't tell God how big my problems are today. I tell my problems how big my God is today. I have to believe that this power is bigger than my problems. Okay? And when I have come to believe that, then I will have found a solution. And I can apply this program of action, simple, to achieve that solution. And my problem, that problem, the grave nature of alcoholism, physical allergy, yes, but more insidiously, that mental obsession. That thought, the thought that preceded me picking up a drink again. The insane thought that this time, somehow, some way it was going to be different. Or I give up. I quit. I can't do this anymore. I hate sobriety. I hate AA. I can't stand the way that I'm feeling. I'm just got to take the edge off tonight. And the biggest lie I ever told myself is I'm going to get drunk tonight, but I'll go back to AA tomorrow. What could be more of a taker than that? What could be more of a taker than someone like me who would say, I'll go back to AA and grace them with my presence when I'm ready. But in the meantime, I'm going to go get drunk. Okay? Selfishness and self-centeredness in the extreme. Letting you all carry wood and chop wood and carry water and keep the fire burning of AA while I went out and did what I had to do until eventually I just surrendered. Okay? So anyway, this is how we fit ourselves to be of maximum service to God and our fellows. Okay? Now, we're going to talk about this tonight. And what's beautiful about what we're going to read tonight, from where we're going to start tonight in the book, we're going to see for the first time ever in the history of mankind.
Now they think she's riding a bicycle.
We're going to, please unmute yourself if you don't mind, everyone. Unmute yourself. Don't unmute yourself. My God. Everyone, please mute yourself. Thank you. What we're going to see for the first time ever is that we're going to see these three pieces all fall into the same frame. Okay, in a meeting between a man named Ebby Thatcher and a man named Bill Wilson tonight. And that's where we're going to start off. And it's a beautiful thing. It's one of the most beautiful moments I think in the history of Alcoholics Anonymous, certainly, but also one of the most beautiful moments, I think, in the history of man. Because for the first time, alcoholics of my type had a real answer, a real solution. Okay. Our book says that my whole deportment should shout at the new prospect that I am a man with a real answer. And today, brothers and sisters, I am a man that has an answer to my problem. I'm not saying that I am the answer. I certainly am not. but I have an answer. And I can show others how to find this power. Okay. We have been given the power to help others. Okay. Through Alcoholics Anonymous and through the grace of God. And it's a beautiful thing. Okay. Speaking of the higher power, speaking of the God thing tonight, we're going to talk about this concept of being given the dignity and the privilege of choosing my own higher power in Alcoholics Anonymous. And we're going to see the moment that happens, and we're going to talk about it. Okay. We're going to talk about where that came from and what that means to a guy like me. So we talked about the problem, the solution, the program of action. And one last time, I'm just going to ask and see if there's any volunteers here tonight as we continue to discuss this problem, the alcoholic problem, as we discuss the cycle of alcoholism. As we know, this is the cycle of alcoholism we get from Dr. Silkworth in his chapter, The Doctor's Opinion, page XXVIII. And as I've mentioned to you guys many times already, but we'll mention it one more time. Bill Wilson is a guy in Bill's story that we see him go through this cycle several times. Okay. We've seen him go through it now in the story where we're at 3 times. He has gone through this cycle where he has sworn off, made a firm resolution, become restless, irritable, and discontent, not when he's drinking, but restless, irritable, and discontent when I am sober because of the unmanageability of alcoholism. Not drinking. You see the difference? I hope some of you who are new are starting to understand and recognize the difference. There is a vast difference between a drinking problem and alcoholism. Alcoholism is a disease that continues on when I'm drinking and when I'm not drinking. Alcoholism is a disease fundamentally that begins when I stop drinking, characterized by great spiritual dis-ease, coupled with a mental obsession, an insanity of mind that tells me that despite all of the trouble I've been in the past through drinking, that this time taking a drink is a good idea and is going to solve my problems. It's not going to give me problems. It's going to solve my problem. Okay, that's how it looks on the outside. Bill Wilson would believe that insane thought. He would pick up that first drink to get that sense of ease and comfort. He would trigger that physical allergy, enter well-known stages of a spree, emerging remorseful again and again. Okay. And as you guys know, when I work with sponsees, the way that I qualify my sponsees into Alcoholics Anonymous, because I think that's important to do, to qualify myself and others as alcoholics to be a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. Okay, tradition 3 says the only requirement for drinking is a desire. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking, right? But the long form of the 3rd tradition says our fellowship ought to include all those who suffer from alcoholism. Okay, not just a desire to stop drinking. To be a member of Alcoholics Anonymous, it is required, according to the long form of the 3rd tradition, that I suffer from the disease of alcoholism. Well, I needed to know what that was. We're looking at it right here. This is the doctor's prescription, the doctor's symptomology for the disease of alcoholism. Swearing off, becoming spiritually sick during the period of sobriety, having an insane thought, taking that first drink to get relief from that spiritual sickness, triggering a physical allergy that is beyond my control, entering a spree and emerging remorseful. And when I work with sponsees, I have them tell 5 stories from their own life that match this cycle. Time where they swore off, what happened, or more to the point, what didn't happen during the period of sobriety. How are they feeling? In what ways did they become restless, irritable, and discontent and spiritually sick? And oftentimes they're totally unaware of it until I can point it out for them. Okay? And I want to pinpoint exactly what was the thought. Exactly what was the insane thought that led them? What was the lie that they believed? Unable to distinguish the true from the false. What was the lie that they believed prior to picking up that first drink? And what happens from there is uniform. Okay, we all know it's the same for all of us. So before we go forward, before we get back into Bill's story, is there anyone online tonight who would like to share a cycle story of their own? Anyone at all? Anyone at all. And if not, I might ask for a volunteer. I might ask my man Jerry. Oh, I just caught him off guard. Sorry, buddy. But I know you're a member of PPG and got a good sponsor. And do you have a cycle story? Would you be able to share one for us? You got no audio. You have no audio. Can't hear you. Maybe you could just get a sock puppet or like just do some sign language or something. Okay, no problem, Jerry. Jerry, sorry, brother, we can't hear you tonight. Is there anyone who would like to share in the spirit, guys, of going from being takers to being givers? Is there anyone who would like to give back to the Big Book study tonight and share?
Karen's got her hand up. Kevin,
would you like to share one?
I'm not sure if this is what you're looking for, but I did some writing today. And I started from when I went into the rehab, and when I went into rehab, and I realized how much I thought I was in control, and how much I thought cunning, baffling, and powerful, that I didn't really believe that. And because I didn't believe that, I thought I could handle it. And there was the cycle, and there was, and I love the whole thing about, I have to tell you that the word D-O, most important word, and it's true. But
well,
I know.
I'm glad that resonates for you. So let me, Karen, if I may, can I help kind of take you through the cycle? Because I think you're on the right track. Let me just fill in a couple of the blanks. Can we do that together?
Sure. Should I let me get to the cycle.
Sure. I'll put it back on for you.
Okay. All right. Let me see. Let me get this out of here. Okay.
Okay. So you went into treatment, and for a lot of times, right? When I'm looking, what was that firm resolution? Let me stop sharing 1 second. Let me see a show of hands. Who here? Raise your hand if you've ever been to a treatment center. Raise your hand if you've been to a treatment center, rehab of some kind. Okay, and then put your hand down, or keep your hand up if you drank. Sorry, guys, keep your hand up if you drank after you were in the treatment center. Okay, so most of us, happens all the time to us, okay? Happens a lot. So for a lot of people, that firm resolution. So just to say, guys, when you're working with a sponsee, okay, and you're taking them through this cycle, and they're like, I don't know, what do you mean by firm resolution? Ask them. Think about a time that you went to treatment, okay? For most of us, that's a firm resolution. None of us go to treatment. Nobody goes to treatment thinking, I'm going to drink again. Not usually, okay? Everybody goes to treatment swearing on side, I'm never going to drink again. It's over forever. Don't worry, Mom. And can I borrow some money? You know, that's right. That gets a laugh, right? Yeah, that's how we are, man. That's how I was. Okay. So when you're working with the sponsee, it's a good place to start. Tell me when you went to treatment. Okay. I went to treatment. That was it. I got in a bunch of trouble and I said, I'm never drinking again. I'm going to treatment. Okay. Now, Karen, when you were in the treatment center, is it safe to say that although you were in treatment, you may not have been having an overwhelming spiritual experience as a result of action in the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous?
No.
Okay.
In my writing, you know, I heard something really important in the Howard meeting. And he said that if he could change any word in the Big Book, he would change alcoholic to alcoholism. Sure. Because that's true. It is really true. That's what I have to deal with now. But
so anyway. When you're in the treatment center, guys, I just want you to understand, it is possible for me to be sitting in the middle of a treatment center or even smack dab in the middle of a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous and be getting worse. Do you guys understand what I mean? I could be getting worse, spiritually sicker. I develop a whole new set of resentments, usually towards the people in the treatment center and the people in AA. Particularly those do-gooder big book thumping Nazis like that Kevin O guy. Drives me crazy, all right? those guys make me nuts, and I get a whole bunch more resentments. I become more restless, more irritable, more discontent. And I don't know about y'all, but when I get that way, sometimes the first thing I want to do as soon as I get out of treatment is go, just have a drink, man. Just have a drink. Okay. So Karen, can you pinpoint for me what exactly, when you left the treatment center, how long did you stay sober after the treatment center? Just quickly, how long? And what was the insane thought that you had before you picked up that drink?
Well, when I left, I thought once I quit drinking and using and all that, it was over. I was done. I'm healed, which was not true. And also the particular treatment center that rehab I was in, they gave me Suboxone.
Oh, that's a great idea.
And
Yes.
that is also, I think all I did was trade one drug for another drug. But
Yeah,
that
let's take an alcoholic and get them off booze, and then instead put them on opiates.
and
Great idea.
pill and Vicodin and all that. But anyway, I don't know if that answers your question, but I thought I was healed. I thought everything was good.
Yep. And then, so then, yeah, I mean, you guys, it's clear to see that she was not having a spiritual experience.
Oh,
She was
no.
having a pharmaceutical experience.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
I like
Yeah.
that one. Okay. So tell me though, Karen, pinpoint for me, what exactly was the thought? Do you remember the moment right before you picked up a drink and you had a thought, you had an insane thought that, you know what, I'm just going to have a few, or was it, what's the use? I give up. I'm going to drink anyway. What was the thought for you, Karen?
I can handle it. This is okay. I can have one beer. What's the deal?
There it
It's
is.
okay. You
There it
know,
is. Now,
and
for any
yeah.
of us, can you hear how insane that sounds?
yeah, it was.
From the outside looking in, I see some nodding heads. Yeah, even, you know, from
Mhm.
some of the newer people are like, yeah, that's crazy. Pardon my language. That's crazy, but it is effing crazy. From the outside looking in, okay? But when it's me, in my own mind, that's the insanity of alcoholism. I believed that lie, regardless of all of the pain that Karen had ever been in. Everything that led up to her going into that treatment center is easily pushed aside in front of the insane idea that this time I can take just one. Okay, it's gonna be fine. I'm gonna handle it. Raise your hand if that like resonates with you. Raise your hand if you're getting that. Yeah, all right, awesome. I really just wanted to see if Don was gonna raise his hand. That's good. Love you, buddy. Okay. Great to go through that with you. Round of applause for Karen, everyone.
Oh,
Round of applause. Okay. Now, guys, next week I'm going to do this again. Okay. And I implore you all, get out of your comfort zone. This is not a TV show. Okay. This is not Netflix. This is making a transition from taker to giver. So I implore you, spend some time this week, figure out your cycle story. And next week, when I ask, I want you guys fighting over the privilege of being able to share your cycle story, as it is a privilege for me. Okay. And make that transition from being a taker, start giving back to the Big Book Study. Okay. You guys with me on that? You understand what I'm saying? Okay. We're going to make that transition from being takers to givers. Okay. Good stuff. Okay. Now, Brad is not here tonight, and some of our other typical readers are not here tonight. Is there anyone who would like to volunteer to be a reader for us tonight? Who has the patience to be interrupted frequently by me as we go? So make sure you got your spiritual suit of armor on before we do this. Who would like to read tonight? DL. All right, there we go.
We were on Bill's story, right?
We are on Bill's story.
Okay.
And last week when we left off right on page 8, right on the 4th dimension. So the next line that we're going to read is near the end of that bleak November. So remember, guys, Bill Wilson he's been in the Towns Hospital 3 times. Okay, in that year, in 1934. What did we say, Rob? April, July, and September, right? So it happened pretty quickly. He stays sober from September to November. Again, he says he started drinking on Armistice Day. November 11th, Remembrance Day. Remember, we talked about how he was a veteran of World War I, and I'm guessing what he was doing was sitting around, yes, some real post-traumatic stress disorder, but yes, just also self-pity, thinking about, woe is me if you would have been through what I went through, and nothing's ever been the same. Easy excuse for a guy like me to start drinking again behind something like that. He starts drinking, and now he's saying near the end of that bleak November. So he's been drinking for about 2 weeks, and he's going to hear this. Okay?
Ready?
And that means that he's getting a visitor. Yeah, back to you, DL.
Okay. Near the end of that bleak November, I sat drinking in my kitchen. With a certain satisfaction, I reflected there was enough gin concealed about the house to carry me through that night and the next. My wife was at work. I wondered whether I dared hide a full bottle of gin near the head of our bed. I would need it before daylight. My musing was interrupted by the telephone. The cheery voice of an old school friend asked if he might come over. He was sober. It was
Okay, guys, so you might want to make a note. This is Ebby Thatcher. Okay. And Ebby Thatcher was as Bill says, he was an old school friend of Bill Wilson. Okay. And we've already talked about this in the history a little bit, but we're going to see it all kind of come together, fall into the same frame tonight. Roland Hazard had gone to see Dr. Young. Dr. Young had told him the solution that you need is a spiritual one. Roland Hazard comes back to the United States. Does anybody remember the movement or the foundation that that Roland Hazard started to get involved in? What were they called?
the Oxford group.
The Oxford Group. Excellent, DL. Oxford Group. So Roland Hazard comes back. He gets involved in the Oxford Group. He learns a spiritual program of action that gets him connected. A couple of his friends one day come to him and say, an old friend of ours is standing in front of a judge. He's going to go to jail. Roland, you know the judge. Your father knows the judge. Maybe you can talk him out of sending our friend to jail. That friend was Ebby Thatcher. Okay. Ebby Thatcher now is 2 months sober. The Oxford Group is saying to him, Ebby, you need to go do for someone else what we did for you. We came and helped you out. Now you need to go help someone else out. In keeping with our program of action, surrender, confession, restitution, and service. Now, Ebby Thatcher is going out to be of service to someone else, and the person that he picks, providentially, is this man, Bill Wilson. Bill Wilson, at this point, has already been to the town's hospital and has already learned about the cycle of alcoholism. So Bill, at this point, guys, and I just want to connect the dots here for you. At this point, Bill knows what the problem is. He knows what his problem is. Remember last week we talked about this was the answer, surely, self-knowledge. Self-knowledge would fix it, which means he came to AA and he learned that cycle of alcoholism and thought that was going to be enough, but it was not. For the frightful day came when I drank again. Okay? Ebby Thatcher, at this point, knows what the solution is and knows what the program of action is from the Oxford Group, and he learns about the solution from Carl Jung through Roland Hazard, but he does not yet know what the problem is. And what we're going to see today, magically, in Bill Wilson's kitchen, is the first time that the problem, solution, and program of action were all connected. And they were connected, as God would have it, by a man named Bill Wilson. Okay? Not because Bill was smarter than us or more spiritual than us or more intellectual than us or anything like that. He was just the right guy in the right place at the right time. And he took this information and we'll see what happens with it. Okay? Back to you, DL.
Okay. He was sober. It was years since I could remember his coming to New York in that condition. I was amazed. Rumor had it that he had been committed for alcoholic insanity. I wondered how he had escaped. Of course, he was.
So right there. So DL, sorry, I'm going to interrupt a bunch of times. Yep. So right there, guys. Okay. Bill had heard that he was standing in front of the judge, basically, and he wondered how he had escaped. He hadn't heard. Guys, what do we know today? How did he escape? He escaped because some members of the Oxford Group came and convinced the judge to let him go, and he began living the spiritual way of life. That's how he escaped. And that's how I escaped too. You with me on that? That's how I escaped. Okay? Back to you, DL.
Of course, Of course, he would have dinner and then I could drink openly with him. Unmindful of his welfare, I thought only of recapturing the spirit of other days. There was that time we had chartered an airplane to complete a JAG. His coming wasn't an oasis in this dreary desert of futility. The very thing, an oasis. Drinkers are like that. The door
All
opened.
right. So one of the things I like to point out here is that these are not like, under the bridge, homeless, derelict drunks. These are actually high profile. Today, we would call them ballers. All right. Okay.
Mm.
These guys rented like a private jet in the 1930s so that they didn't have to, they said to complete a JAG, which just means they didn't want to stop the party. They didn't want to stop partying. So they chartered an airplane. These were very, very wealthy, well-to-do men, okay, who were now bottomed out. Bill Wilson sitting in his kitchen, broke, on the verge of going bankrupt, stealing from his wife so that he can continue drinking. Okay, back to you, DL.
The door opened and he stood there, fresh-skinned and glowing. There was something about his eyes. He was inexplicably different. What had happened?
Okay, so I'm going to stop you there. This is one of my favorite lines in our whole book. Okay, because Ebby Thatcher now has already carried a message to Bill Wilson and he hasn't even said a word. Bill can just see there is something different going on with this guy. Fresh-skinned and glowing, there was something about his eyes. He was inexplicably different. Why does that matter? Because every time I relapsed and every time I went back out drinking again, you know what I could never forget? It was the warmth and the smile and the handshakes and the hugs and the laughter and the fresh skin and the glowing that I saw from the members of Alcoholics Anonymous. That's what haunted me when I was drinking. I couldn't remember the big book and I couldn't remember the steps and the traditions and all that. I couldn't remember that. Okay. But what I could remember is you. And that's what I couldn't get out of my mind. And I knew that you had a solution. And I could see it when I went to meetings of AA. And I could see. And sometimes, guys, the most important message that we can carry in this spirit, again, of making this transition from being takers to being givers. It's not what I say. We don't all have to be Bill Wilson. What I do have to do is shake the newcomer's hand and smile and let them know that they are welcome and let them know that we have something really special here in AA. Fresh-skinned and glowing. There was something about his eyes. I could see in your eyes this little candlelight flickering behind your eyes, this light that came on, And when newcomers, typically around step 5, man, you can see a change happen in newcomers. Any of you old timers, raise your hand if you've ever seen that. These newcomers, when they do step 5, you can see it all over them. When recovery happens, man, you can't hide it. This thing just starts blasting out of us, okay? And this is what Bill Wilson is seeing in Ebby Thatcher right now for the first time. He's carried a message of hope to Bill Wilson, and he hasn't even said a word. And I love that, okay? Back to you, DL.
I pushed a drink across the table. He refused it. Disappointed but curious, I wondered what had gotten into the fellow. He wasn't himself. Come, what's all this about? I queried. He looked straight at me. Simply but smiling, he said, I've got religion.
All right. So when he says, I've got religion, everybody don't freak out. Okay. Don't log off the call. Just hang with us. All right. Everything's going to be okay. AA is not a religious organization. Okay. I promise you, this is not a bait and switch. Okay. We're not Scientologists. Don't worry. Okay. What does he mean when he says, I've got religion? What does he mean? He means that he started associating with this Oxford group. That's it. He started associated with the Oxford group. He started doing, as Karen said, doing the actions of the Oxford group, and he's had this connection. That's all he means, okay? When he says, I've got religion. Back to you, DL.
I was aghast, so that was it. Last summer, an alcoholic crackpot. Now I suspected a little cracked about religion. He had that starry-eyed look. Yes, the old boy was on fire all right, but bless his heart, let him rant. Besides, my gin would last longer than his preaching. But he did no ranting. In a matter-of-fact way, he told how 2 men had appeared in court, persuading the judge to suspend his commitment. They had told of a simple religious idea and a practical program of action. That was 2 months ago, and the result was self-evident. It worked. He had
All right, guys. So I just want to point out here, Ebby says, 2 men appeared in court persuading the judge to suspend his commitment. Those 2 men originally on the Friday were Seba Graves and Shep Cornell, 2 non-alcoholic members of the Oxford group. Their friend Ebby was in front of court. They thought to themselves, maybe we can persuade the judge if we bring Roland Hazard with us because he was a bad drinker and now we've gotten him sober. So on the Monday, Roland Hazard comes back with Seba Graves and Shep Cornell. That's what Ebby means when he says 2 men appeared in court persuading the judge to suspend his commitment. They told of a simple religious idea, and that simple spiritual idea is simply that God conquers alcoholism, period. God conquers alcoholism, okay? And a practical program of action. What is that program? Simply, guys, surrender, confession, restitution, and service. That's it. Practical program of action. Surrender, confession, restitution, and service. That was 2 months ago. The result was self-evident. It worked. Now, I think this is very instructive. People often ask, Kevin, how long should I be sober before I start sponsoring people? Well, I think that answer varies, but what I always like to use as a benchmark, how long was Ebby Thatcher sober when he started carrying the message to Bill Wilson? 2 months. 2 months sober. He was carrying the new, that's, you can't argue with that. There's no argument to be had. That is the foundation of Alcoholics Anonymous. So you can tell me, no, guy's got to be at least a year sober. It's like, that's might be your opinion, but the fact is, Alcoholics Anonymous got its start when a guy who was 2 months sober started carrying the message to a guy who was still drinking. That's where AA came from, okay? So, back to you, DL.
He had come to pass his experience along to me if I cared to have it. I was shocked, but interested. Certainly I was interested. I had to be, for I was hopeless. He talked for hours. Childhood memories rose before me. I could almost hear the sound of the preacher's voice as I sat on still Sundays. Way over there on the hillside, there was the proffered temperance pledge I never signed. My grandfather's good-natured contempt of some church folk and their doings. His insistence that the spheres really had their music. But his denial of the preacher's right to tell him how he must listen. His fearlessness as he spoke of these things just before he died. These recollections welled up from the past. They made me swallow hard. The wartime.
All right, guys, we talked about Bill's grandfather last week. Bill's grandfather was a bad drinker, okay? And this is what Bill is remembering, his grandfather, the way his grandfather felt about this kind of stuff. Now, some of this stuff is very confusing, and so I've looked back and I've studied this to see what does he mean when he says his insistence that the spheres really had their music. What does that mean? Well, it's really simple. In Greek mythology, they believed that as the planets rotated, all of the planets in the galaxy rotated, that it made a sound, that it made a certain harmonic vibration. And it's like this celestial orchestra. So when they're saying the spheres, it means the planets. And when those planets are rotating and orbiting around each other, it's making music. So what he's saying is he could believe that like celestially in the galaxy, that there was something going on, but he's not going to let any preacher tell me what that means. I'll interpret that for myself. You guys see what I'm saying? That the spheres really had their music, but he wouldn't let a preacher tell him how he ought to listen. Okay? No, yeah, and the proffered temperance, exactly, Rob. That pledge is something that they did a lot. Remember, this is still Prohibition era. Until 1933, so Prohibition had just ended. It had just ended. 1920 to 1933 is Prohibition era in the United States. So this is 1934. Prohibition had just finished. Okay, it was just finishing. And so they would sign these temperance pledges, right? I'll never drink, and I swear on my family that I won't drink, and so on and so forth. You can find pictures of them online, but what we're seeing right now, and Bill is going to go through a lot of this, happens a lot when we get to step 2 with newcomers. Okay, they want to talk on and on and on about what they believe and what they don't believe and what they feel and what they like and what they think about step 2. Okay, and what I love about Alcoholics Anonymous is its simplicity with the respect to spirituality. Okay, because a guy like me, I need to keep it simple. Okay, I like to read wordy books and indulge in windy arguments. And I was so smart when I got to AA, I was almost dead. That's how smart I was. Okay, I had no actual relationship with God, but I had studied religious philosophy in school, and I could tell you enough, drunk in a bar about God to make you want to puke. Okay, that's the real truth. Okay, what we're going to see right now is Bill Wilson doing some of this. Wah, 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 wah. Here's what I believe. Here's what I don't believe. Here's what I think. Here's what I don't think. No, imagine this. Imagine this guy, unshaven, drunk, sipping on a bottle of gin in an old dirty house coat with cigarette burns in it. And there's Ebby trying to carry this message. And here's this guy, Bill Wilson, going off about, here's what I think about God and what I don't think about God. And, there is a God, whatever happened to me in Europe when I was in World War I. All that kind of nonsense. Ebby's going to let Bill go for a little while. And then we're going to see Ebby give Bill what I call the 1-2 punch. And he's going to floor Bill Wilson with this. He's going to knock him right over. So let's see what happens. DL?
That wartime day in Old Winchester Cathedral came back again. I'd always believed in a power greater than myself. I had often pondered these things. I was not an atheist. Few people are. For that means blind faith in the strange proposition that this universe originated in the cipher and aimlessly rushes nowhere. My intellectual heroes, the chemists, the astronomers, even the evolutionists, suggested vast laws and forces at work. Despite contrary indications, I had little doubt that a mighty purpose and rhythm underlay all. How could there be so much of precise and immutable law and no intelligence? I simply had to believe.
Guys, do you see how he's Sorry, do you see how he's laying it on pretty thick right now? Can you imagine? Poor Ebby having to sit there with his drunk going on and on about all this stuff. Anyway, he's going to let him go a little while longer.
I simply had to believe in a spirit of the universe who knew neither time nor limitation. But that was as far as I had gone. With ministers and the world's religions, I parted right there. When they talked of a God personal to me, who was love, superhuman strength, and direction, I became irritated and my mind snapped shut against such a theory. To Christ, I conceded the certainty of a great man, not too closely followed by those who claimed him. His moral teaching, most excellent. For myself, I had adopted those parts which seemed convenient and not too difficult. The rest I disregarded. The wars which had been fought, the burnings, and I'm not sure what that word is.
Chicanery.
Yeah, that religious dispute had facilitated, made me sick. I honestly doubted whether, on balance, the religions of mankind had done any good. Judging from what I had seen in Europe and since, the power of God in human affairs was negligible. The brotherhood of a man, a grim jest.
All right, guys, again, remember, he's saying here what I had seen in Europe. Okay, remember, this just fortifies my theory that he started drinking again on Remembrance Day because he's triggered by what happened when he was in Europe. He's talking about when he fought in World War I. So he's saying, what happened to me in World War I, what I saw over there made me not want to believe in God. You guys understand what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, back to you.
If there was a devil, he seemed the boss universal, and he certainly had me. But my friend sat before me, and he made a point blank declaration that God had done for him what he could not do for himself. His human will had failed. Doctors had pronounced him incurable. Society was about to.
So this is the first punch. So when it says here, but my friend sat before me and made the point blank declaration that God had done for him what he could not do for himself. I just want everyone to understand this is Ebby's response. Okay, so Bill's going wah, 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 wah about everything that he thinks and believes and all this hullabaloo about what he likes and doesn't like about God. And Ebby says, Bill, I don't know about all that. I don't know about any of that. What I do know is that something has happened to me. God has done for me what I could not do for myself. Bill, you know the way I used to drink. You drank with me. Okay. And so this is the first, again, there's like a 1-2 punch. This is the first one. And I want you guys to be aware of it. Okay. And I want you to see how Ebby talks to Bill here, because it's very instructive in how we lay out the spiritual program and talk about God to newcomers. Okay. Back to you, DL.
Society was about to lock him up. Like myself, he had admitted complete defeat. Then he had, in effect, been raised from the dead, suddenly taken from the scrap heap to a level of life better than the best he had ever known. Had this power originated in him? Obviously, it had not. There had been no power in him than there was in me at that minute, and this was none at all. That floored me.
So now let's see. What is the impact of what Ebby just said on Bill? And DL just said it. DL?
Sorry?
That floored me.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
He's floored. He's floored by what Ebby just said. The simplicity of spirituality in AA. It's not about big celestial, religious things. God did for me what I could not do for myself. This power did not originate in me, Bill. Something has happened to me as a result of this thing, and now I'm 2 months sober. And that floors Bill. Okay, so that's the first punch. DL, let's keep going.
Okay, so that floored me. It began to look as though religious people were right after all. Here was something at work in a human heart which had done the impossible. My ideas about miracles were drastically revised right then. Never mind the musty past. Here sat a miracle directly across the kitchen table. He shouted great tidings. I saw that my friend was much more than inwardly reorganized. He was on a different footing. His roots grasped a new soil.
Just show of hands, guys. Just show of hands. Anyone here prior to coming to AA try to inwardly reorganize yourself? Just try to straighten up and fly right and pull myself up by my bootstraps and do it my way, and I'm going to inwardly reorganize myself. Okay? This is what Bill is saying. I could see that Ebby was much more than just inwardly reorganized. His roots grasped new soil. Okay? And one of the things it says, in that other big book is that, you will know them by their fruit. Okay. When my roots grasp new soil, you will know them by their fruit is what that book says. Okay. And Bill Wilson can see the fruit that is coming from Ebby's roots grasping new soil. Okay. You guys with me on that? We've planted seeds in Ebby and now it's starting to sprout, and Bill can see it in this guy, can see it in his old friend Ebby. Back to you, DL. Guys, I'm doing my best here, but and I know I'm talking a lot, probably too much, but we might go over 7 p.m. If you guys have to leave, we'll probably go to about 10 after 7. If you have to leave, my feelings will not be hurt, not at all. Okay, you guys do what you need to do, but we're just gonna keep going. Okay.
Despite the living example of my friend, there remained in me vestiges of my old prejudice. The word God still aroused a certain antipathy. When the thought was expressed that there might be a God personal to me, this feeling was intensified. I didn't like the idea. I could go for such conceptions as creative intelligence, universal mind or spirit of nature, but I resisted the thought of a czar of the heavens. However loving his sway might be, I have since talked with scores of men who felt the same way. My friends.
Okay, so now this is the second punch. Okay, the first one. I don't know about everything you're talking about, Bill. What I do know is that this power has happened to me. Something has happened to me. Okay, and Bill now is saying, yeah, but I still don't like it. I'm still prejudiced. I don't like all the religious stuff. And now Ebby Thatcher is going to change the world, and Ebby Thatcher is changing my life and yours. Okay. And Ebby Thatcher says, DL?
My friend suggested what then seemed a novel idea. He said, why don't you choose your own conception of God?
And what does Bill say?
That statement hit me hard. It melted it melted the icy intellectual mountain in whose shadow I had lived and shivered many years. I stood in the sunlight at last.
So guys, let's talk about this. Let's talk about just quickly about, and I promise I'll be quick about it. I could talk for an hour about this, but I'll be very quick. This idea of choosing your own conception of God, okay? Where did this come from? Because I'm going to be honest with you guys. The actual history of AA is not necessarily what actually happened at Bill Wilson's home with Ebby Thatcher that night is not necessarily what we're reading in this story. Okay. Bill Wilson took some liberties, if you will, some poetic justice. Okay. Bill Wilson was a showman. He's a showman and he's a salesman and he wanted to paint a certain picture, and thank God that he did. Okay. Because he sold me on it. And I needed to be sold, okay? Because I was a tough customer with respect to AA. You guys, any other tough customers out there? Okay? I did not come to the God thing willingly, man. Okay, I'll talk more about this when we go into the chapter, We Agnostics. I did not come to AA as a God-loving man. Came to AA as a crackpot, broken atheist, okay? Who wanted to die. And I think a lot of us are that way. Not all of us, obviously, but some of us. So this idea of choosing your own conception, step 3, God as we understand it. Where did that come from? Well, it didn't come from Ebby, not in this moment, because Ebby is aligned with the Oxford group at that time. And the Oxford group, unashamedly, unapologetically, were a Christian organization. So it didn't come from Ebby in this moment. It didn't happen this way. Okay? What happened is between 1934. So this is I think this is December 8th. December 8th, 1934 is when Ebby Thatcher comes to Bill's house. Bill doesn't get sober right away. He goes into the town's hospital December 11th, 1934. Rob, you feel free to Google that and let me know if I've got the right date. What was the date that Ebby came to Bill? December 8th. Good. So between December 8th, 1934, when Ebby comes over as a member of the Oxford group, and April 10th, 1939, when the big book is written, a lot happens between 34 and 39, okay? Members of Alcoholics Anonymous, some of them continue to gravitate towards Christianity, and some of them start to break away and say, no, we are our own separate thing. We're going to break away from the Oxford group. Really, there was a bit of a schism between the people in Akron, Ohio, and the people in New York City, as I understand it. The first AA group to break off from the Oxford group was led by a guy named Clarence Snyder in 1937 in Cleveland, okay? Where they started to separate and they started to say, no, drunks are alcoholics of my type. We're too prejudiced against organized religion. And lots of us will never get sober if it's required that we have to believe as the Oxfords believe. Thank God, because I would not be sober today. I would have died drunk. If step 3 said made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of any organized religion, I never would have come to AA, ever. I'm a lot more open-minded to this stuff today, okay? But so where did this idea come from? Well, a lot of people talk about a guy named Jim Burwell, who was famously known to be an atheist in AA, but was able to get sober anyway, and got sober, stayed sober, and they hated that he stayed sober because he was like still this atheist guy. And then unfortunately he drank again. And when he came back, there was some understanding of maybe, we can choose our own God. The way that I like to think about it, where did this idea of choosing our own God come from? I don't think it came from any single human person. I believe that idea came from God himself. I believe that God spoke through the hearts and the minds of people in AA with compassion and love and understanding, and said to us, like, guys, we're just trying to open the door a little bit, just enough to let these drunks through, okay? And from there, they can find God in their own way. But we just need to open the door a little bit. In fact, let's see what Bill Wilson has to say next in the squiggly writing.
It was only a matter of being willing to believe in a power greater than myself. Nothing more was required of me to make my beginnings. I saw that
moment, Bill Wilson takes step 2. That's step 2. That's where Bill takes step 2. And guys, it's not more complicated than that. For me, when I take sponsees through step 2, it's only a matter of being willing. That's it. To believe in a power greater than myself. Okay? in the chapter We Agnostics, it says, do I now believe, or am I even willing to believe there is a power greater than myself? It does not say that I need to come to believe in God. It just says, am I willing to believe that there is a power of some kind? Okay? And anyone who's ever been to a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous and felt it, you felt the power. Okay? You felt the power. Anyone who's ever come to my home group, you know, Matthew, Andy, Dominic, you could walk in that room and you can feel it. You can feel it. People, Adam Marr tells me you can feel it when you're standing outside. Okay, you can feel it when you're standing outside. The first time he pulled up to the meeting in his car, he could feel the power coming through that. That's not because of us. That's happening through us because we have connected to this power. Okay, and it's only a matter of being willing to believe. Nothing more was required to make my beginning. Nothing more. Okay, now Bill has moved. He has evolved from the problem. He is now off the cycle and he has begun moving. He has made a beginning towards a solution. Okay? You guys with me on that? Magical. Absolutely magical. Back to you, DL.
I saw that growth could start from that point. Upon a foundation of complete willingness, I might build what I saw in my friend. Would I have it? Of course I would. Thus was I convinced that God is concerned with us humans when we want him enough. At long last, I saw, I felt, I believed. Scales of pride and prejudice fell from my eyes. A new world came into view. The real significance of my experience in the cathedral burst upon me. For a brief moment, I had needed and wanted God. There had been a humble willingness to have him with me, and he came. But soon the sense of his presence had been blotted out by a worldly clamors, mostly those within myself, and so it had been ever since. How blind I had been.
Guys, I don't know a better description of what Alcoholics Anonymous does and why it is required that I do all 12 steps than what we just read. That is an absolute microcosm for the disease of alcoholism and the solution in Alcoholics Anonymous. Bill Wilson wanted and humbly needed God to be with him. There had been a humble willingness to have him with me, and he came. But soon, the sense of his presence had been blotted out by worldly clamors, mostly those within myself. This is why we don't have a two-step program. If all I needed to do was just come to AA and get God, I would come to AA, I'd surrender, I would get God, everyone would stay sober and no one would ever relapse. Okay? But what's the problem? The problem is that my connection to God is blotted out by what? Worldly clamors, mostly those within myself. The purpose of the remaining 10 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, those steps that we do, as Karen said, are to clear away those worldly clamors, to quiet them down, to remove my necessity, to remove my obsession to drink alcohol as the only other proposed solution I ever had to quiet down those worldly clamors. Every time I drank, I wanted to get the same thing that I look for and the same thing that I found in Alcoholics Anonymous. I have found a sense of ease and comfort. Okay? I have found a higher degree of mental comfort and an escape from the tortures of the mind. Okay? The tortures of the mind. And we all know what that's like, these worldly clamors that blot out the presence of God in our lives. And that's the purpose of Alcoholics Anonymous, is to get me out of my own head enough to quiet down those worldly clamors, quiet them down internally, and then get out of myself and go help someone else so that I can feel the presence of God, and God conquers alcoholism. Okay? Back to you, DL.
At the hospital, I was separated from alcohol for the last time. Treatment seemed wise, for I showed signs of delirium tremens.
December 11th, 1934, Bill Wilson goes back to the Towns Hospital. He's back in the Towns Hospital now, okay? He gets sober and detoxes for 4 days. Ebby Thatcher now comes to the hospital December 16th, 1934. And over the next 2 days, they're going to go through all of the 12 steps. And Bill Wilson leaves the Towns Hospital December 18th, 1934, okay? What we're going to see now is Bill Wilson go through the rest of the remaining steps with Ebby Thatcher. Okay?
You want me to carry on? Sorry.
Yes,
Sarah-
yes, please.
Okay. There I humbly offered myself to God as I then understood him, to do with me as he would. I placed myself unreservedly under his care and direction. I admitted for the first time that of myself I was nothing, that without him I was lost. I
Okay,
ruthlessly
so stop there. Guys, what step was that he just took? Step 3. Beautiful deal.
Okay.
That's right. He just did step 3. Okay?
I ruthlessly faced my sins and became willing to have my newfound friend take them away, root and branch. I have not had a drink since.
Okay, so that's Bill taking step 4. Okay? Doing step 4.
My schoolmates, you want me to keep reading? My
Yes, please.
schoolmate visited me and I fully acquainted him with my problems and deficiencies. We made
What step did
lists.
he just take? What step is that?
5.
Step 5. He just did a step 5 with Ebby Thatcher right there in the hospital. Okay?
We made a list of people I had hurt or toward whom I felt resentment. I expressed my entire willingness to approach these individuals, admitting my wrong. Never was I to be critical of them. I was to right all such matters to the utmost of my ability.
Okay,
I
what
was-
steps is that? Steps 8 and 9.
9.
Steps 8 and 9. Bill Wilson just did steps 8 and 9 to the extent that he could in the hospital. I mean, he obviously didn't go make the amends, but he became willing to make the amends. Okay, steps 8 and 9.
I was to test my thinking by the new God consciousness within. Common sense would thus become uncommon sense. I was to sit quietly when in doubt, asking only for direction and strength to meet my problem as he would have me. Never was I to pray for myself, except as my request bore on my usefulness to others, sorry, then only might I expect to receive, but that would be in great measure.
Okay, so guys, fundamentally, Bill, obviously step 10, step 11, and he's thinking about how he can be useful to others, which is what? Step 12. Okay? You see the full complement of all the steps. And how long did it take Bill Wilson to do those steps? 2 days. 2 days. Okay? Bill Wilson does the 12 steps in 2 days in the Towns Hospital with Ebby Thatcher. Okay?
My friend promised when these things were done, I would enter upon a new relationship with my creator, that I would have the elements of a way of living which answered all my problems. Belief in the power of God, plus enough willingness, honesty, and humility to establish and maintain the new order of things were the essential requirements. Simple, but not easy. A price had to be paid. It meant destruction of self-centeredness. I must turn in all things to the Father of light who presides over us all.
Man,
These
I love that. Father of light. Beautiful. One of the things we're going to talk about more when we get into step 6 and 7. What is the opposite of self-centeredness? The opposite of self-centeredness is God-centeredness. Okay. And another way to say God-centeredness is humility. Okay. So destruction of self-centeredness. It means putting God as the central fact of my life. And I believe putting AA and recovery as the central fact of my life. When I do that, everything else that orbits around that center is very good. If I let anything else get in that center, a job, relationship, finances, all of the trappings of life, if I let some of that, even family, and that's hard for people to hear sometimes. But if I stop keeping God and recovery and AA in the center, and I put my family in the center, and I say to myself, well, I don't have time to go to those meetings anymore. I don't have time to call my sponsor because I got to get my family back on track. What happens? I get drunk again and lose my family. That's what happens. Okay? You guys with me on that? It's hard to understand. It's hard to hear sometimes for people, but I've seen it happen time and time and time and time again. I've got to put God and recovery at the center. When I do that, life is beautiful. I love this saying. Carl Morris, great AA speaker, loves to say, I live in AA and I visit the world. When I live in AA and I visit the world, the world is a cool place. When I try to live in the world and visit AA, I'm a dead man. The margin for error in AA is so small, brothers and sisters. Okay? I've got to keep the Father of Light who presides over us in the center. Okay? And by the way, I always like to say this. Next time you go to one of those 3-topic discussion meetings, okay? Try bringing up the topic. I'd like to talk, someone will say like importance of meetings. The next person will say like, let's talk about step 1. And then say, I'd like to talk about turning in all things to the Father of Light who presides over us. Okay? And see what kind of reaction you get at the meeting. All right? I challenge you to do that. Let me know how that goes. Back to you, DL.
These were revolutionary and drastic proposals. But the moment I fully accepted them, the effect was electric.
So what we're going to see here, guys, this is a famous AA classic moment. This is what is known as Bill Wilson's white light spiritual experience, his hot flash spiritual experience, whatever you want to call it. Okay. A lot of people will touch back to this as evidence of the miracle of Alcoholics Anonymous that has happened for us, and this incredible moment that happens for Bill Wilson in the Towns Hospital. Okay. The most important thing, guys, in terms of the dots that I want you to connect, this spiritual experience that happens to Bill Wilson does not happen out of the blue. What does he do first before he has this experience? He does the 12 steps. He does the 12 steps, then he has this experience, not the other way around. But see, my problem, guys, is that I'm a something for nothing kind of guy. Front me the dope, I'll pay you later. Give me the bottle, put it on my tab. And I do the same thing in AA, don't I? Give me that spiritual experience and then I'll do the work. Let me have that fresh-skinned and glowing look that you have and that light in your eyes. And then I promise, man, I'm good on my word. My word is good. The check is in the mail. I promise you. Okay? But give me that first and then I'll do the work. And it doesn't work that way, man. I can't run game on God. Okay? I can't jive God. I got to do the work first. Bill Wilson does the work. Then I have the experience. Okay? Back to you, DL.
There was a sense of victory, followed by such a peace and serenity as I had ever known. There was utter confidence. I felt lifted up, as though the great clean wind of a mountaintop blew through and through. God comes to most men gradually, but his impact on me was sudden and profound. For a moment, I was alarmed and called my friend, the doctor, to ask if I were still sane. He listened and wondered as I talked.
So Bill Wilson calls Dr. Silkworth. That's who he calls when he says, my friend, the doctor. I just want you to be clear. It's not Dr. Young. It's not Dr. Bob. He's calling Dr. Silkworth, the guy who gave us the cycle, the chief medical director of this National Institute for Alcoholism. He calls Dr. Silkworth and says, here's what's going on.
Finally, he shook his head, saying, something has happened to you. I don't understand, but you had better hang on to it. Anything is better than the way you were. The good doctor now sees many men who have such experiences. He knows that they are real. While I lay in the hospital, the thought came that there were thousands of hopeless alcoholics who might be glad to have what had been so freely given to me. Perhaps I could help some of them. They in turn might work with others. My friend
so Bill Wilson is a guy who has this spiritual awakening in the Towns Hospital, and he is a guy that has a real profound, burning bush, genuine spiritual experience with God in the Towns Hospital. But he always connected that to his sobriety, and he always believed that he had a calling to help other alcoholics, and we see it happening here. Okay, and what Bill went through and what he was going to continue doing for the rest of time was carrying on through this spiritual awakening to continue carrying this message to alcoholics who still suffer. And thank God that he did. Because don't forget, guys, Bill Wilson did not know that he was going to become Bill Wilson. Bill Wilson did not know that Alcoholics Anonymous was going to become a worldwide foundation with millions of members with his picture up on the wall. He didn't know that. At this point, he's just a guy sober, a few days in a hospital with a spiritual conviction and a desire to go help other people. What could be more beautiful than that? Back to you, DL.
My friend had emphasized the absolute necessity of demonstrating these principles in all my affairs. Particularly was it imperative to work with others as he had worked with me. Faith without works was dead, he said, and how appallingly true for the alcoholic. For if an alcoholic failed to perfect and enlarge his spiritual life through work and self-sacrifice for others, he could not survive the certain trials and low spots ahead. If he did not work, he would surely drink again, and if he drank, he would surely die. Then faith would be dead indeed. With us, it is just like that. My
I
wife,
think about this line, these certain trials and low spots, right? And not all trials are low spots either, guys. Sometimes the biggest trials that alcoholics can have, the only thing worse for an alcoholic than bad luck is good luck. Okay? When things go really well, it can sometimes be the biggest trial of all. I remember Ronald Reagan, former President Ronald Reagan, talking about his father who was an alcoholic. And he said, Dad could always get sober when things were bad. But man, once we started to get back on our feet and once we started to get money again, that's when Dad would relapse. That's when Dad would drink again. Man, do I identify with that. Trials and low spots. Not all trials that we go through are going to be low spots. You guys understand what I mean by that? All right, back to you, DL.
my wife and I abandoned ourselves with enthusiasm to the idea of helping other alcoholics to a solution of their problems. It was fortunate, for my old business associates remained skeptical for a year and a half, during which I found little work. I was not too well at the time, and I was plagued by waves of self-pity and resentment. This sometimes nearly drove me back to drink, but I soon found that when all other measures failed, work with another alcoholic would save the day. Many times I have gone to my old hospital in despair. On talking to a man there, I would be amazingly lifted up and set on my feet. It was a design for living that works in rough going. We commenced to make many fast friends, and fellowship has grown up among us, of which it is a wonderful thing to feel a part. The joy of living we really have, even under pressure and difficulty. I have seen hundreds of families set their feet in the path that really goes somewhere. Have seen the most impossible domestic situations righted, feuds and bitterness of all sorts wiped out. I have seen men come out of asylums and resume a vital place in the lives of their families and communities. Business and professional men have regained their standing. There is scarcely any form of trouble and misery which has not been overcome among us. In one Western city and its environs, there are 1,000 of us and our families. We meet frequently so that newcomers may find the fellowship they seek. At these informal gatherings, one may often see from 50 to 200 persons. We are growing in numbers and power.
Okay, guys, this is the last thing that I want to say tonight, and then DL's gonna read us out. Please don't drop off the call right away, because I love going around the circle, going around the room and just having everybody say hello and let us know where you're from. I love it, man. I think it's the coolest. So it says here, we meet frequently so that newcomers may find the fellowship they seek. Guys, this tells me what my motive ought to be in going to meetings. Okay? My motive in going to meetings ought not to be to go to get something, to take something. How many times in my life did I say, oh, I need a meeting. I really need a meeting. And I was going to go to a meeting and treat it like group therapy and go and just give my little bag of garbage and dump it out in the meeting and somehow cathartically think that I was going to be well and stay sober. And I didn't. That is not a solution to alcoholism. Sitting around and talking about my problems and hoping that things get better is not a solution to alcoholism. Solution to alcoholism is meeting. Why? So I can go find a newcomer who may find the fellowship they seek. When I make that transition from being a taker to being a giver is when my life started to change. My motive in going to a meeting ought to be to go to give something, not to take something. Okay? We meet frequently so that newcomers can find the fellowship they seek. I go with a motive of thinking about them, not thinking about myself. As my grant sponsor, Clancy, says, when I'm thinking about this sick puke, I'm not thinking about this sick puke. All right? That's exactly how my grant sponsor says it. I love him. Back to you, DL.
An alcoholic in his cups is an unlovely creature. Our struggles with them are variously strenuous, comic, and tragic. One poor chap committed suicide in my home. He could not or would not see our way of life. There is, however, a vast amount of fun about it all. I suppose some would be shocked at our seemingly worldliness and levity. But just underneath, there is deadly earnestness. Faith has to work 24 hours a day in and through us or we perish. Most of us feel we need look no further for utopia. We have it with us right here and now. Each day, my friend's simple talk in our kitchen multiplies itself in a widening circle of peace on earth and goodwill to men.
Beautiful. Okay, you guys, that's it. That's all for tonight. Thank you all. I know we went a little bit over time. Thank you for indulging us. And I will stop the recording. Rob, I think I will. Recording.